The rain-soaked plea. The night was quiet except for the rhythmic tapping of rain against the pavement, a steady drumming that filled the empty streets. Officer Daniel Carter climbed the steps of the precinct, his boots heavy with fatigue from another long shift. The weak glow of the streetlights flickered against the wet pavement, casting eerie shadows across the sidewalk. Just as he reached for the door handle, something made him pause. A shape huddled near the building's brick wall, so small that at first, he thought his exhausted mind was playing tricks on him. He squinted through the downpour, his instincts flaring. It wasn't a bundle of discarded rags or an abandoned bag. It was a child. A little girl, no older than 5 or 6, sat curled up against the wall, hugging her knees to her chest. Her dark curls clung to her small face, drenched and dripping. She wore a pink dress, now soaked through, clinging to her frail frame. The sight sent an uneasy chill through Daniel's spine. He had seen plenty of runaways before, kids escaping troubled homes, rebellious teenagers testing their limits. But there was something about this girl that felt different. She didn't look like she was running. She looked like she was waiting. Slowly, he crouched down to her level, careful not to startle her. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said, keeping his voice low and steady. "What are you doing out here all alone?" At first, she didn't respond. She simply tightened her arms around her legs, her small shoulders trembling. Then, after a long pause, she lifted her head. Large brown eyes met his, filled with something far beyond fear, something deeper. A sadness no child should ever carry. "Will you adopt me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel felt the words hit him like a punch to the gut. He hadn't expected that. He had been prepared for crying, for incoherent explanations, maybe even silence. But not this. Not a desperate plea wrapped in such haunting simplicity. He swallowed hard, his throat tightening. What? He blinked, trying to process the question. "Sweetheart, what do you mean?" "Please," she whispered again. "Adopt me." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. There was something disturbingly practiced about the way she said it. Not the innocent wish of a child who didn't understand the weight of adoption, but a rehearsed plea, as if she had asked before, and been turned away. Her small hands clenched the wet fabric of her dress. "I don't eat much. And I know how to be quiet." Daniel's chest tightened. Something was very, very wrong. He forced himself to stay calm. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated, then finally answered. "Maya." "Okay, Maya." He offered her a reassuring nod. "Where are your parents?" The reaction was instant. Her body stiffened, her fingers curling into tiny fists. "They're gone." His pulse quickened. "Gone?" Maya bit her lip, then shook her head quickly, as if she had said too much. Daniel exhaled slowly. He had handled plenty of tough cases in his years on the force. Domestic disputes, child endangerment, missing persons. But this was different. He needed to get her inside, out of the rain. "Come on," he said gently, reaching out his hand. "Let's get you warm, okay?" Maya hesitated. Then, slowly, she reached up, slipping her small, cold fingers into his. The moment their hands touched, a strange feeling passed through Daniel. It wasn't just the usual sense of duty he felt when helping someone in need. It was something stronger. Something deeper. As he led her inside, the precinct was mostly empty, just a few night shift officers milling about, filling out reports or sipping lukewarm coffee. He guided Maya to a chair near his desk and draped his jacket over her tiny frame. One of his colleagues, Officer Hernandez, glanced up from her paperwork. "What's this?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Found her outside," Daniel said, keeping his voice low. "She says she has no parents." Hernandez frowned, setting down her pen. Lost kid? I don't think so. Daniel glanced back at Maya, who was now staring at the floor, her small fingers gripping the hem of the jacket. I think she ran from something. Or someone. Hernandez studied Maya for a moment, then sighed. I'll call CPS. The moment the words left her mouth, Maya flinched. No, she said quickly, looking up at Daniel with wide, panicked eyes. Please don't call them. His heart clenched at the raw fear in her voice. Maya, he said carefully, crouching in front of her again. Why don't you want us to call CPS? She shook her head violently, her breath coming faster. They'll take me back. Back where? The bad house. Daniel's stomach turned. What do you mean by the bad house? Maya hesitated, her fingers tightening on the jacket. Then, she whispered, kids go there, and they don't come back. Daniel's breath stilled. This was no ordinary case. He glanced at Hernandez, whose expression had turned grim. She had heard enough horror stories about the system to know that sometimes, kids fell through the cracks. Sometimes, the people meant to protect them were the ones they needed protection from. Daniel turned back to Maya, his voice firm but gentle. You're safe here, Maya. No one is taking you anywhere until we figure this out. Okay? Maya hesitated, then nodded. But the look in her eyes told him she didn't believe it. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt since he lost his wife and daughter. The burning need to protect someone. To fight for them. No matter what it took, unraveling the darkness. The precinct buzzed with the quiet hum of night shift officers finishing their reports, the occasional ring of a phone cutting through the silence. But at Daniel's desk, time seemed frozen. Maya sat curled in his oversized jacket, her tiny hands gripping the fabric as if it was the only thing keeping her tethered to safety. Daniel studied her carefully, his mind racing. He had encountered plenty of cases involving children in danger, abusive homes, neglectful parents, even runaways trying to escape something worse. But Maya was different. She wasn't just scared. She was terrified. And her words echoed in his mind. The bad house. Kids go there, and they don't come back. Something was very, very wrong. He exhaled slowly, trying to keep his voice gentle but firm. Maya, can you tell me more about this house? Who was taking care of you? She tensed. I can't. Daniel frowned. Why not? Maya didn't answer. She just hugged herself tighter, staring at the floor. Hernandez, who had been standing nearby, shifted uneasily. CPS is sending someone over, she said. They'll take it from here. The moment she said it, Maya's breath hitched. Daniel turned just in time to see her eyes go wide with panic. She jumped up from the chair, clutching his sleeve. No, please. You promised. His stomach twisted at the sheer desperation in her voice. Maya. You said no one would take me. Tears welled in her eyes, her small fingers digging into his arm. They're going to send me back. I know it. Daniel felt his pulse spike. He knew the protocol, CPS had to step in when a child was found alone. But something about this didn't sit right. The raw terror in her voice wasn't just a child afraid of being moved around again. It was something darker. Hernandez must have noticed too because she sighed. Look, Carter, I get it. But CPS has rules. Daniel clenched his jaw. He knew she was right. But rules didn't always protect kids. Sometimes, they put them right back in danger. He turned back to Maya. Okay. Let's take this one step at a time. I promise you, I won't let anything bad happen to you. Maya stared at him for a long moment. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, You can't stop them. Daniel's blood ran cold. Them. Not it. Not CPS. Them. This wasn't just about a broken foster system. There was someone she was afraid of. Someone she believed was powerful enough that not even a police officer could stop them. Before Daniel could ask more, the precinct doors swung open. A woman in a neatly pressed gray suit stepped inside, clutching a clipboard. Her face was lined with exhaustion, her gaze scanning the room until she found them. "Officer Carter," she called, approaching with an air of quiet authority. "I'm Evelyn Ward from Child Protective Services. I understand you found a young girl outside?" Daniel stiffened. He had dealt with CPS before. Some of them were good people, fighting against a broken system. Others? Not so much. Maya shrank against him, her tiny hands fisting in his sleeve. Evelyn's eyes flicked to the girl. This must be Maya. Maya didn't say a word. Evelyn crouched down, offering a practiced smile. "Hi, sweetheart. My name is Evelyn. I work with people who help kids find safe homes." Maya flinched as if the word safe was some kind of cruel joke. Evelyn straightened and turned to Daniel. "We'll take her into emergency custody for the night while we contact her caseworker." Daniel folded his arms. "She says she's afraid to go back." Evelyn let out a sigh, as if she had heard this 100 times before. "I understand these situations can be emotional, but her case file will have all the details we need." "She says kids disappear," Daniel said bluntly. Evelyn blinked. For just a split second, her expression faltered. It was fast, so fast that someone less observant might have missed it. But Daniel didn't miss it. She recovered quickly, adjusting the clipboard in her hands. "That's concerning," she said carefully. "If there's any evidence of mistreatment, we will investigate." Daniel's gut twisted. That wasn't a denial. And that was a problem. He turned to Maya. Her entire body was rigid, her breath shallow. She wasn't looking at Evelyn. She was looking past her, at the open door. Then, before Daniel could react, she bolted. "Maya." The little girl darted between desks, weaving past officers as she made a run for the exit. Daniel was already moving, his instincts kicking in. He caught up to her just as she reached the doorway, scooping her up in his arms. She struggled, pounding her tiny fists against his chest. "Let me go. Please. I don't want to go with her." Daniel held her tighter, his heart pounding. "Maya, stop, listen to me." She froze, breathless, her face buried in his shoulder. He could feel her shaking. "I won't let anything happen to you," he whispered, his voice firm but gentle. "But I need you to trust me, okay?" Slowly, hesitantly, she nodded. Daniel turned back to Evelyn. "I need her case file," he said. "Tonight." Evelyn pursed her lips. "That's not standard procedure." "I don't care," Daniel said flatly. "Something isn't right. I want to know who put her in that house, who runs it, and why she's so scared." Evelyn hesitated. Then, with a tight smile, she said, "I'll see what I can do." But Daniel didn't like the way she said it. As she turned and walked out, Daniel felt the weight of Maya's small body in his arms. She had stopped struggling, but her grip on his uniform was tight. He exhaled, his mind racing. He didn't know what he had just stepped into. But one thing was clear. Maya wasn't just a lost child. She was a target. And whatever dark secret she was running from, it wasn't finished with her yet. Shadows in the system. The air outside was thick with the scent of rain-soaked asphalt, a chill cutting through the late-night hours. But inside the precinct, Daniel Carter felt something colder settle in his chest. A gnawing unease that refused to fade. He sat at his desk, Maya curled up in the chair beside him, fast asleep. His jacket swallowed her small frame, her damp curls sticking to her forehead. Even in sleep, her tiny hands clutched the fabric like a lifeline. Daniel leaned back, exhaling slowly. His instincts screamed at him, something was deeply wrong. Kids don't just vanish. They don't whisper about bad houses and disappearances unless something truly horrific is happening. And the way Evelyn Ward reacted? That moment of hesitation? It told him everything he needed to know. She wasn't surprised. She knew. Someone knew. But the real question was, how deep did this go? His fingers drummed against the desk. If he waited for CPS to do their investigation, Maya might be swallowed back into the same system she had barely escaped from. And if what she said was true, she might not get another chance to run. He wasn't about to let that happen. Daniel pulled out his laptop, cracked his knuckles, and got to work. The foster system files. It started simple. He accessed the department's internal database, searching for Maya's full name, Maya Henderson. He cross-referenced her with CPS case files, previous placements, and reports of any abuse complaints. Nothing. His brows furrowed. That didn't make sense. A 5-year-old girl found alone in the rain should have some record of where she had been placed. There should be a paper trail, a caseworker, some note of her history. But there was nothing. His fingers flew across the keyboard. If CPS didn't have her officially listed, maybe he could find something in missing children reports. He ran another search. This time, something popped up. Missing, Maya Henderson. Age, 5. Last seen, 6 months ago. Status, case closed. Daniel's stomach twisted. Case closed? He opened the file. The report claimed that Maya was found safe and returned to her legal guardians. Case resolved. No further investigation needed. But if she had been found, then who the hell had her? And why was she terrified to go back? A creeping sensation crawled up his spine. He needed more. Daniel reached for his phone and dialed an old contact, Detective Sam Lewis, someone who used to work in missing persons before transferring to organized crime. If anyone could pull a thread on a case that smelled like corruption, it was him. The phone rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Carter? It's almost 3 a.m. This better be good. Daniel glanced at Maya, still curled up asleep. I need a favor, Sam. Quiet favor. A pause. Then, fully awake now, what kind of favor? There's a kid here. 5 years old. Was reported missing 6 months ago, but the case was closed under suspicious circumstances. No CPS records, no real paper trail. Something's not right. Another pause. Then Sam muttered, shit. Yeah. Daniel heard rustling on the other end, the sound of a laptop opening. Alright, send me whatever you've got. I'll dig. Daniel hesitated. Be careful. Something about this smells big. Sam exhaled sharply. Bigger than you think. Daniel stiffened. What do you mean? A beat of silence. Then Sam muttered, you ever heard of St. Helena's Group Home? The name sent a chill down Daniel's spine. He had. Everyone in law enforcement had. It was a private foster facility that claimed to rehabilitate troubled children, taking in kids the system had nowhere else to place. On paper, it was just another group home. But rumors swirled, whispers of abuse, missing kids, even worse things. Nothing had ever been proven. Until now. Daniel clenched his jaw. Maya mentioned a bad house where kids don't come back. You think it's them? I don't know yet, Sam admitted. But I'll find out. Sit tight. The call ended. Daniel closed his laptop, his pulse pounding. Maya stirred in her sleep, a whimper escaping her lips. Instinctively, he reached out, gently brushing the damp curls from her face. What had this little girl seen? And how many others had been lost before her? The vanishing children. By morning, Daniel had barely slept. Sam's text came at 6:42 a.m. Sam, you were right. St. Helena's has had 7 missing foster kids in the last 2 years. All cases closed quietly. No media. No investigations. Daniel cursed under his breath. 7 kids. Gone. And no one in power had done anything. This wasn't just neglect. This was intentional. Daniel looked at Maya, who was still sleeping, curled up like a kitten. She wasn't supposed to escape. His phone buzzed again. Sam, and Carter? You're not gonna like this. Guess who signed off on most of those closed cases? Daniel's grip tightened on his phone. Sam, Evelyn Ward. Your CPS lady from last night. His pulse spiked. She had lied to him. She had walked into the precinct last night, acting like just another overworked CPS worker. But she wasn't just part of the system, she was covering up whatever was happening to those kids. And now, she knew Maya was still alive. Daniel's stomach dropped. He looked down at Maya. Then the front doors of the precinct slammed open. Evelyn Ward strode in, flanked by 2 uniformed officers and a man in a suit. A man who screamed high-level government. Daniel's instincts went into overdrive. The suited man flashed a badge. Detective Carter, we're here for the girl. Maya jerked awake, eyes wild with panic. No, she whimpered. No, 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 no. Daniel's heart pounded. He could see it, the fear in her eyes, the way her hands clutched his sleeve like she was already being pulled away. And for the first time in his career, Daniel knew that if he followed protocol, if he handed Maya over, she wouldn't survive. She would be just another missing file. Another closed case. Another child who never came back. The suited man gave him a tight smile. We wouldn't want any trouble, detective. Daniel's jaw clenched. He had 2 choices. Follow orders. Or run. And as Maya's tiny fingers dug into his sleeve, as her wide brown eyes filled with silent terror, he knew there was only one choice to make. Daniel stood up, gripping Maya protectively against his chest. Then he turned, and ran. Nowhere to hide. A desperate escape. Daniel's heart pounded as he pushed through the back exit of the precinct, Maya clinging to him like a lifeline. Rain pelted down in icy sheets, soaking his shirt within seconds. The freezing air burned his lungs, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Behind him, the commotion inside the station erupted. Shouts. Footsteps. Orders being barked. They were coming. He tightened his grip around Maya, shielding her against his chest as he sprinted toward the parking lot. His car was parked on the far side, a beat-up, unremarkable sedan. The best getaway car he had ever owned. Hang on, kid, he muttered, fumbling for his keys. Maya trembled against him. Are they gonna take me? Daniel's jaw clenched. Not if I can help it. He reached his car and yanked the door open, slipping into the driver's seat with Maya still in his arms. His hands were shaking as he shoved the key into the ignition and twisted. The engine roared to life. The second he reversed out of the spot, the front doors of the precinct burst open. A blur of movement, 2 officers sprinting toward them, guns drawn. Daniel's gut twisted. They were serious. He slammed the gear into drive and floored the gas. Tires screeched as the car lurched forward, fishtailing on the wet pavement. Headlights swung wildly as he tore out of the lot, narrowly missing a squad car pulling in. In the rearview mirror, the suited man from CPS stood on the steps, watching them leave. Not chasing. Not shouting. Watching. And that terrified Daniel more than anything. The long road ahead. The city blurred past them in streaks of rain and neon. Daniel gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles ached. His mind raced through their next move, options flickering through his head like a broken slideshow. Where do we go? Every cop in the city had just seen him run. His name, his face, he was already being flagged as a fugitive. His apartment? No. That would be the first place they'd look. His family? No. Too risky. Hotels? No. Credit cards could be traced. He needed off the grid. And there was only one person he trusted for that. Daniel snatched his phone and dialed as he sped through the near-empty streets. It rang once. Twice. Then a voice answered. Carter? Daniel exhaled. Sam. I need a safe house. A long pause. Then, Jesus, Carter. What did you do? Daniel glanced at Maya, curled up in the passenger seat. Her tiny fingers clutched the jacket draped over her shoulders. She looked so small. I saved a kid, he said quietly. And now they're trying to bury us both. Sam didn't hesitate. I got a place. Old cabin up north, outside the city. It's been off the books for years. Daniel's grip tightened on the wheel. I owe you. You owe me about 20 favors now, Carter. A beat. And I'm guessing you need a burner phone? Yeah. Sam sighed. I'll drop it at the usual spot. But listen. Whoever's after you? They've got power. Real power. You're not just running from local cops. Daniel glanced in the mirror. No sirens yet. I know. Then he hung up and kept driving. The hunt begins. They reached the outskirts of the city an hour later, slipping into the endless stretch of forests and backroads that separated civilization from nowhere. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle, making the dark trees look even more menacing as Daniel turned down an old, half-forgotten dirt path. Maya was quiet the whole time. Only when he finally killed the engine did she speak. Are we gonna die? Daniel's chest tightened. He turned to her, his voice softer than he expected. No, kid. I promise. Maya's big brown eyes studied him, searching for any sign of doubt. Then she whispered, people break promises a lot. Daniel swallowed hard. He reached over, gently taking her tiny hand in his. I won't. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then, slowly, she nodded. Daniel exhaled, leaning back in his seat. God, what had this kid been through? And more importantly, who wanted her gone badly enough to kill for it? The evidence that changes everything. Daniel didn't sleep. By morning, he had built a fire in the old cabin's wood-burning stove, found some clean clothes for Maya, and sat at the kitchen table, piecing together everything they knew. Maya ate quietly, nibbling at a piece of toast like she wasn't sure it was real food. Daniel flipped through the notes he had written on an old notepad. 7 missing kids. All recovered but no public records of them. Evelyn Ward signing off on every closed case. St. Helena's group home at the center of everything. And then there was Maya herself. The kid who wasn't supposed to exist. Daniel ran a hand over his face. Maya, he said gently, do you remember anyone else from the bad house? She hesitated. There was a boy, she whispered. His name was Leo. Daniel's pulse kicked up. Leo what? She shrugged. He was 10. He said they were taking him somewhere special. But he never came back. Daniel's stomach churned. Another missing kid. Another, closed, case. He grabbed his phone and dialed Sam again. "Tell me you got something," Daniel said as soon as he picked up. Sam's voice was grim. "It's worse than we thought." Daniel braced himself. "How bad?" "They're not just trafficking kids, Carter. They're selling them." The blood in Daniel's veins turned to ice. Sam continued. "St. Helena's isn't a foster home. It's a pipeline. CPS marks kids as missing, ships them to private care facilities, and then, they disappear." Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "Who's behind it?" Sam hesitated. Then he said a name that made Daniel's entire body go rigid. "Senator Graham Easton." Silence. Daniel felt like the wind had been knocked out of him. Easton was a powerful senator with deep ties to social welfare programs. He had personally championed reform for foster care. And now, he was at the center of a human trafficking ring. Maya was staring at him now, sensing his tension. Daniel inhaled sharply. "Sam," he said, his voice low. "If Easton is involved, that means—" "They're already looking for you," Sam finished. "And Carter? If you don't make a move soon." A pause. "They're gonna erase you." A sharp knock echoed through the cabin. Daniel's blood ran cold. Maya's eyes widened in terror. Daniel snapped his phone shut, grabbing Maya and pulling her behind him. He reached for his gun, stepping silently toward the door. Another knock. Harder. Then, a voice. "Detective Carter. We know you're in there." Maya whimpered, clutching his arm. Daniel took a slow breath, his mind racing. He had one shot at this. One chance to get Maya out alive. And if they wanted a fight? He was ready to fight for survival. Nowhere left to run. The pounding on the door grew louder. "Detective Carter. Open up now." Daniel's fingers tightened around the grip of his gun. His pulse roared in his ears. How had they found him so fast? Maya was trembling behind him, her small hands clutching his sleeve. Her wide, fearful eyes cut straight through him. "You have to protect her." Daniel exhaled sharply and made a split-second decision. They weren't here to arrest him. They wouldn't bother with warrants or due process. They were here to make them disappear. He turned to Maya and whispered urgently, "Go to the back. There's a crawl space in the closet. Hide there and don't come out until I say so." "But—" "No buts. Go. Now." Maya hesitated for only a second before she ran toward the bedroom. The door shuddered as someone slammed into it. They were coming in. Daniel moved quickly. He yanked a chair under the door handle, buying himself a few seconds, and rushed toward the side window. The cabin was isolated in the woods, but if he could get to the tree line, he'd have a chance. Crack. The front door burst open. Daniel dove through the window just as gunfire exploded behind him. Glass shattered, and a bullet zipped past his shoulder, embedding itself in the wooden beam outside. He hit the muddy ground hard, rolling onto his feet. Shouts erupted from the cabin. "Move! Find the kid!" Daniel sprinted. He had to lead them away from Maya. Thunder rumbled overhead, and the rain picked up again, turning the forest floor into a slick, treacherous mess. He ducked between trees, his breath coming in harsh gasps. Then, a sharp whistle. Daniel threw himself to the ground just as a bullet whizzed past his head. Sniper. They had professionals on this. His heart pounded. They weren't trying to capture him. They were trying to kill him. The trees offered cover, but not for long. He needed to turn the tables. He crouched behind a fallen log, wiping rain from his eyes. His mind worked fast. He was outnumbered, outgunned, but he had the advantage of knowing this land. And he still had a gun. Carefully, he peeked around the log. 3 men were advancing through the trees, their dark clothing blending into the night. One of them was carrying a silenced rifle, the sniper. Daniel took a slow breath. 1 shot. Make it count. He steadied his aim and squeezed the trigger. Bang! The sniper dropped instantly. Shouts rang out. We're compromised. Daniel didn't hesitate. He took off again, zigzagging through the woods, making himself a harder target. The remaining 2 men weren't far behind. But now, they were cautious. They knew he was armed. Good. Let them be afraid. The betrayal. Daniel's legs burned as he pushed forward. He needed to create distance. Then, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He hesitated, just for a second, before yanking it out. A single message from Sam. They tapped my line. Run. Daniel's stomach dropped. They knew where he was going before he even called Sam. This wasn't just a dirty CPS scheme. This wasn't just some corrupt officials. This was bigger. Senator Easton had resources. Connections deep enough to plant people inside the police force, inside CPS, inside the very system that was supposed to protect children. And now, those connections were hunting Daniel and Maya down like animals. Daniel cursed under his breath. There was no one left to trust. A desperate move. He ran until his legs screamed for mercy. Then he made a choice. He needed a vehicle. He needed firepower. And most of all, he needed to get Maya out of here before they found her. He made a hard right, cutting through the thick brush, and spotted an old hunting shack in the clearing. If he could just... Crack! Pain exploded through his side. Daniel staggered, his breath catching in his throat. He'd been hit. He reached down, his fingers coming away wet and slick with blood. The bullet had grazed him, but it was deep. Move, Carter. Move. He shoved himself forward, using the last of his strength to kick open the shack's door and tumble inside. It was dark. Dusty. Abandoned. But it had what he needed. A shotgun leaned against the wall. A few scattered rounds. A rusty old truck parked behind the shack. Hope. Daniel grabbed the shotgun and pumped it. His vision swam, but he forced himself to stay upright. If they came through that door, he'd make sure they regretted it. Outside, footsteps crunched on the wet leaves. Carter. We know you're in there. Daniel exhaled, leveling the shotgun at the door. Come and get me. The last stand. The door exploded inward. Daniel fired. Boom. The first man went down. The second dove for cover, but Daniel was already moving. He shoved past the wrecked door, grabbing the man by the collar and slamming him against the wall. Who sent you? Daniel growled. The man coughed, his eyes darting wildly. You're already dead, Carter. You just don't know it yet. Daniel tightened his grip. Where's Easton? A smirk. Untouchable. Daniel's vision blurred with rage. He slammed the man's head against the wall, knocking him out cold. He didn't have time for games. He grabbed the truck keys off the table and bolted. The race against time. The truck roared to life, tires spitting mud as Daniel slammed the gas pedal down. His side throbbed, but he didn't care. He had to get back to Maya. The cabin loomed in the distance. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. Please be okay. Please be okay. He skidded to a stop and threw open the door. Maya? Silence. Daniel's chest tightened. No. No, no, no. Then, a whisper. Daniel? He turned and saw her peeking out from the closet. Relief hit him so hard he nearly collapsed. He crossed the room in 2 strides and scooped her up, ignoring the pain ripping through his side. "You okay, kid?" She nodded against his shoulder. "I was scared." Daniel swallowed hard. "Me too." Then he set her down and cupped her face. "We can't stay here." Maya wiped at her eyes. "Where do we go?" Daniel glanced at the truck. Then, he made a decision that would change everything. "We end this." The final move. He had enough evidence. He had the truth. And now, he was going to take it straight to the people who couldn't ignore it. The media. The public. The world. Because if Senator Easton wanted to silence them, then Daniel was going to make damn sure the entire world was listening.